Merry Meet and welcome back. It's lovely to be with you as always. Today I would love to discuss the topic of harmony. And that word bugs me because people don't understand what harmony means. So I want to talk a little bit about harmony and then see if we can't discuss it in relationship to more of an esoteric understanding of it. Harmony, simply defined, means, from a musical perspective, two or more notes sounding at the same time. That's it. Two or more tones sounding at the same time is harmony. Now, we can separate the definition of harmony into two types of harmony. You can have dissonant harmony, or you can have consonant harmony. And there's a lot of argument with musicologists and scientists of sound as to what creates dissonance and what creates consonance, but there is general agreement as to what consonance and dissonance is. Basically, if a harmony is consonant because it sounds like it fits together. There's very little tension. There's very little unease associated with it. So I'm going to actually use my trusty old piano here to show you what a consonant harmony is with just two tones. All right? We all know that that's consonant harmony. It's very, very pretty, right? All right, so that's consonant harmony. We would call those thirds. All right? Now, there's another kind of harmony, which I discussed, which is called dissonant harmony, and that means that there's tension. You hear that? There's beats that go against the grain of what sounds comforting to us. There's three tones. Harmony is dissonant. Harmony is consonant. Right? Does that make sense? So you can tell the difference between when something is consonant and when something is dissonant. Now, again, this sounds like it's going to be a music lesson, but I promise we're going to get into what we're talking about here. In addition to there's two types of harmony, you can also say that there's two types of dissonance. There is functional dissonance, and there is structural dissonance. Structural dissonance means that it's necessary to the actual harmonic structure of, let's say, a chord or a sounding of two or more notes. Structural dissonance means that it has to be in there in order for this to have that structure. That seventh chord would not be able to be called that without this dissonant tritone. You don't have to know what any of this means. Just know that structural means it's inherent to the structure of the harmony for there to be dissonance. Functional dissonance has to do with whether the dissonance, how it's resolved, what its purpose is, what its function is. Functional dissonance means that it's trying to move you from one place to another. So again, with that same chord, structurally, yes, there has to be that, but functionally, this has to do that. Does that make sense? Functionally, this is wanting to go somewhere. It's wanting to go there, right? So in human relationships, in interpersonal relationships, before we even get into that, the only way to have the so-called disharmony, if we were going to be really a purist about it, using our definitions, the only way to have disharmony, meaning that there's no harmony at all, would mean to be that you would have to be alone. You'd have to be by yourself. There is no harmony here. There's no harmony here. There's no harmony here. Now, I know that some of you music scientists out there would say, yes, but there's harmonic overtones. Okay, don't work my last nerve with that. One note at a time, for our purposes here, means that there is no harmony. Anytime you're going to play more than one note at a time, there is some sort of harmony. There is some sort of harmony. There's some sort of harmony. There is some sort of harmony because there's two or more tones striking together. With people, that's the same way. The only way that you can really, truly have disharmony is if you're all by yourself. So anytime you and another individual are interacting on any level, there is harmony. Now, it's very easy for us to say, okay, I understand. So there's consonant harmony, there's consonance, and there's dissonance. There's consonance and there's dissonance. So it's very easy for us to say, well, what we want is consonance all the time. All we want is everything to feel pretty. All we want is consonance, and then our life is only going to be this. Okay? But imagine, for the rest of your life, that's it. That's all you get, sweetie. You get nothing but that. I mean, it's pretty, but... right? There's got to be dissonance in life. That's what makes us grow. That's what makes us move. That's what makes things interesting. That's what makes life delicious. So now let's look at how dissonance is important, and let's relate to what we're talking about musically to our relationships with one another. All right, so we talked earlier about structural dissonance, right? Okay, now listen to this. Now, this is going to relate to your being with a person. Here is structural dissonance. This is you at odds with another person. Okay? There's no way to resolve that because this is just you guys aren't budging. This is you. Now, look what happens when we bring somebody else into the picture. You guys are still at odds with one another, but we brought somebody else into the picture. Did you notice how it changes it a little bit? Let's see what happens when we bring one more person into the picture. Whoa, what happened? You guys are still doing this, but two other people came and joined you, and you got this? All of a sudden, this sounds like lazy days. I mean, it's beautiful, right? But by yourselves, not so beautiful. That's the beauty of community. That even though sometimes you are at odds with another person, it only necessarily takes other people within your vicinity to round you out and to make that dissonance that you two have more meaningful, to take the rough edges off of it without you two having to budge. You don't have to change one thing. But these other people came into your vicinity and helped round it out. Isn't that beautiful? The same thing can be said for if you're in a situation where there is dissonance, you don't necessarily have to do anything other than be yourself. And this becomes this. Right? Isn't that interesting? I find it fascinating. Here's this. Fighting against one another. One more person comes in. One more person comes in. One more person comes in. There's still dissonance in there, but it's much prettier than that. Right? So I hope that's making some sense. So sometimes in our interpersonal relationships, the dissonance that we're experiencing is only because those two people, even though they may not ever be able to change, they may not be able to ever come at each other in a consonant manner, other people around can help pick up the slack, round out that chord, and make it something beautiful and make you appreciate that other person for who they are without having to change your point of view, without having them having to change their point of view. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, now here's another, the other, we were talking about that other form of dissonance. This is much more in keeping with what we talk about in the craft is functional dissonance. The dissonance is actually having to take you somewhere, right? So it's not so much that, yes, you can bring other people in to round that out, but this is still wanting to go somewhere. This is still wanting to go somewhere. it's not so much that there's dissonance, but how is that dissonance resolved? How is it resolved? It's not so much that we want to avoid dissonance. It's that when we have the dissonance, our job is finding out, okay, is it structural or is it functional? If it's structural, okay, then we either have to learn how to love it or we have to find a better environment with other people so that we can have a better chord. If it's functional dissonance, which is usually what we're dealing with in interpersonal relationships, that some people will never get along. That's true, and in that case, it's better to have other people around. But with people that go in and out of, which is normal, that go in and out of consonance, dissonance, that's not that it's wrong or bad. It's that we have to know how to navigate those dissonances. That way we can move, we can grow, we can do, we can expand. So there can be something more to life than forever. I hope that makes some sense. So when you hear somebody talking about harmony and disharmony, a lot of times people are misunderstanding the whole concept of interpersonal relationships and what they are here for. I love, when people talk about covens and how a lot of times there can be problems in covens and disharmonies. And it's not just covens, it's families, it's any kind of community, any kind of organization. They are fertile ground for interpersonal conflict. And conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not the conflict that's the issue. It's what is it used for, and how is that conflict resolved? How is that conflict resolved? This, if you resolve it into something, if it's here and you resolve it into something, but if it's here it just gets worse and worse and worse. Then these interpersonal conflicts, these disharmonies, as people call them, these dissonances, grate on us and they wear us down. And it's our responsibility as individuals to understand when there is conflict, when there is tension, when there is dissonance, and recognize it for what it is and say, oh, I see. This is an opportunity for me to move forward with this person. Okay, I know I'm beating this dead horse here, but remember this, it only takes one to make it a little less of a problem. Only one person's moving, right? It doesn't take two. I mean, it's nice if you can both. That's fine. But if not, one person can resolve. One person can resolve the harmony, the disharmony, the dissonance. One person is all it takes to be open, receptive, and willing to say, I see, there's dissonance that needs to be resolved. Now, it's up to us to be able to, like we said, we have to understand, we have to be able to understand, is it always dissonant with this person? Are we always at odds? Are we always butting heads? Is there no possible resolution? In that case, you either need to know that it's time to not spend a lot of time with that person, or you need to bring other people into the situation to round that cord out. But if it's a relationship that's meaningful to us, that means that it was at one time consonant. So a dissonance does not necessarily mean that the relationship has to be over. Dissonance does not necessarily mean that there's an irresolvable problem. It means that it's time for us to look at where the next resolution is coming from. And you can always tell by getting quiet within and asking that still small voice within you, where is this tension needing resolution? And it's usually one tiny step in one direction or another is all that it takes. It doesn't take big leaps. It takes one tiny, minuscule step in one direction or another for that dissonance to be resolved. And if that dissonance gets resolved, you know what you have got? You've got a cadence. It's called a cadence. Isn't that beautiful to be able to have a resolution? So that dissonance became a gift. It became a gift. It made some music out of your relationship rather than some static chord that nobody wants to hear anymore because it's so boring that we want to just die. Does that make sense? So when we have these problems in our interpersonal relationships, we can celebrate them if we know that this is the universe working through us, trying to show us a means by which to have our lives become more symphonic and less boring, less static. You know, that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for people, especially people in the craft, I think everybody should learn how to play an instrument. I think it's more than just for fun or for enjoyment. I think it really touches the soul at such a deep level. And I also think, in addition to playing an instrument, that everybody should know how to sing, because it's a part of it's just a part of being human, is to be able to sing and play music. And if you don't play an instrument and you're thinking, well, maybe I could learn how to play the drum. I think drumming is great, but it's not what I'm talking about. I think everybody should learn how to play some kind of melodic instrument. The guitar, the harp, the piano, the flute, something where they can actually make music. And the problem with our culture today is we misunderstand. There's a place for professional musicians, absolutely, just like there's a place for professional chefs. But just because you don't have the desire or maybe even the facility to ever make it as a professional musician does not negate the importance of being able to make music and to play music with other people and to sing with other people. And just the idea of sitting down with your instrument every day, even for 15 minutes, and practicing and disciplining yourself to understand how melodies, and if you have the type of the instrument that can create harmonies are created. And if you play with other people, there's nothing like it. When you can sing and or play with other people, there's no better way to understand how to harmonize, how to be in sync energetically, because music is energy. Music is energy. And I don't care if you feel like you have talent for it or not. You do. It's just part of being human. Now, like I said, just because you're not going to be a professional does not negate the idea that it's still a vital, important part of living. There are cultures where everybody plays an instrument and everybody sings. There's not these talented versus untalented people. That does not exist because it's not real. It's not real. Now, again, there's going to be some people it's their lot in life to be professional. They're going to be performers. And there's a difference between being a performer and playing music with people. I hope that makes some sense. And again, this is not all about just music for music's sake. This is music to understand, to have a visceral understanding of what harmony is, and to learn how to be in sync with your fellow human beings and with nature and with yourself. I've really enjoyed spending some time with you. As always, I look forward to spending more time with you very soon.